Call the meeting to order. Yep. Thank you. There we go. I was like,
You're
hang on,
good.
the steps I have to take. I would have gotten there. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thank you for starting the recording. It is 6:34 p.m. on Tuesday, May 27th. This is the GOL meeting of that day. So we are the tab situation in my life right now. There we go. All right. So we had a request to shake up the order of the agenda a little bit, so I wanted to just confirm. I'm going to make sure everybody can hear and be heard. I swear to God, I have to write this down or I forget. And to see who is present. So let's start with Lynn Griesmer,
Present.
Pat DeAngelis,
Present.
and I am present as well. So Michelle Miller asked if we could shift the order of the agenda a little bit because she'd like to be here for the discussion on the ABRC charge. And I think based on our conversation last time, it would behoove us to have her here for that discussion as well. So I'm going to shift some things a little bit if that's okay with you both. And I'd like to start with the water and sewer rates and amendments to the regulations. This was presented to the council on Monday and referred to GOL, is my understanding. I was not there on
It
Monday.
was referred to GOL, but
With finance.
did finance pass them?
So Athena, I'm gonna look to you. I think
Finance did recommend the water and sewer rates.
yeah.
They did. Okay.
I think you had emailed me that, but so we have what threw me a little bit was that what I could find was the memo from the packet. I believe that was the only document. Is that correct? From the Monday packet?
I
Um,
I believe so.
I think
there
so.
should also be the bylaw, because what we have to do is just declare the bylaw clear, consistent, and actionable.
It's actually the regulations.
The
Right.
Changes to the regulations, but the bylaw requires that we go through this process for the changes.
Yeah, and we tried to split those out intentionally. So I'm going to share
Yeah.
my screen and then we'll
Right.
go through this. Okay. I've been relegated to the upstairs of my house, which is approximately 94 degrees. So
Oh, Jesus.
sorry if my face we haven't like put the AC units in or anything. So if you see me getting redder and redder, I'm not getting angry at this. I'm just warm. All right. So basically Paul's recommendation, and we're just looking for clarity, consistency, and actionability. Is that correct, right? So the pieces that we are looking at are whether the changes that are in the motions are clear, consistent, and actionable, because those are the motions to change. Is that correct, Athena?
Yes, you have the motions, and then there's one additional. Are you looking at the updated memo?
Yes.
I think
It
so.
does not
Yeah.
include. I'm looking for. You're scrolling so fast.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
looking
sorry.
for
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It is
The
the
septage.
updated. It said updated at the top.
It should have the septage fee changes too.
I think that was the yellow part
Was that up at the
in the
top?
very beginning, at the very
Yeah,
top.
I think it is.
Oh yeah, right
Yeah,
here.
right
Yeah.
around here.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so we're just looking at the motions and making sure they are clear, consistent, and actionable. And before we get into this fun time, I'm going to welcome Councillor Ette and make sure that we can hear you and you can hear us.
Yes, you can.
All right. Do you have any hot thoughts on water and sewer regulations? Okay, so folks have had a chance to read this as part of council, but also we can just reread this quickly. I'm going to just name that these generally are a bit hard sometimes to, on the face of it, understand. So clear, consistent, and actionable, meaning once you read it 5 times, you know what it means for the average person, I think would be a fair rule because these are confusing. But let's take a second and look at these.
Do we have the dates to fill in?
Ooh,
In the second bullet
oh,
and third.
ah,
Oh, you know what? I think those get filled in
Those are
accordance.
filled in when we actually do them.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Good question.
And the specific public comment period is this coming Monday, just for your information.
Perfect. I'm gonna keep scrolling, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But hold on, I'm still trying to decipher what's happening in. So we're moving to graduated rates
Mhm.
So
for,
it's just the dollar amount that's changing.
and by replacing.
So this is already in there. And it's being replaced with this.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I move that we declare this clear, consistent, and actionable.
Is there a second? And does that motion work for you, Athena? All right. Is there a second?
DeAngelis.
Thank you, DeAngelis. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call.
Consorete was waiting. He wants to second something else, but I'm gonna beat him.
I'm sorry. I didn't have my camera up and right in front of me, so I was looking for the auditory cue here. All right. I'm going to call the vote, and I'm going to make sure I write this down first. Give me one moment, please. Motion to find the. All right. Counselor Ete, how do you vote?
Aye.
Counselor DeAngelis.
Aye.
Counselor Griesmer.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. So that motion passes. 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 absent. All right. Excuse me. So we are going to, great job, everybody. All right, let's move on. I did not receive, and I'm going to poke the council again. I'm going to go next to our rules of procedure. I had not received any specific edits from folks. Did people have time to go through this for this meeting, or do we want to continue this discussion at a later date? And I can also prod the council. I did not get track changes from folks yet, from anybody yet. But I haven't prodded them in a while.
Maybe there's nothing to change. That would be delightful.
Unless people have this, have something for us to discuss today, what I will do is I'll put it on one more agenda and say this is kind of an as needed. And if people have something, I know that I like personally, I have things that I would like to shift and have not yet. So it's not a problem for me to reach out again in my next report to the council and ask for people to do that. But am I correct that people don't have something for me today, right? Or for the group chat? Okay. Okay. So let's, excuse me, let's move on to the town manager evaluation process. And I put some really quick thought into the best way to approach this discussion. as a group. And I started to think about just really truly how to structure the discussion more than anything else. And I'm open to suggestions, but it's because it's a bit of a daunting process. I thought about thinking first with if people are open to it, our process today would be to kind of get through as much of these questions as many of these questions as we can, really brainstorming out. And then in the next meeting, we would start to try to next meeting or after, depending on how long this takes, we try to start to solidify this a little bit more, and get a bit more concrete in what it's going to look like this year. Does that a quick look at these questions, and I will put this, I truly drafted these in my prep time for this meeting, which was right before this meeting. So that's why this wasn't in the packet. But are there other questions that people would like us to discuss as part of this process? Okay. Yeah, Counselor Arte.
This looks good as a first stab at getting a sense of what the process would be.
Okay, thank you. When we get into the other questions a little bit and the question 4 here, this will be if people did have a chance to do some of their external research, this would be where that comes in. Obviously, let it inform your conversation wherever. But are people ready to jump into this? Okay. So I would love for this to be really kind of a free-flowing conversation. I'm going to take notes as we go to make sure I capture the discussion. But please feel free, unless it gets too unwieldy, I'm going to say, please feel free to share your thoughts here. But I want us to start with thinking about why we do this evaluation process. What are the needs? And so let's start with ourselves first, because that's often the easiest place when we think, because we're all inherently a little narcissistic.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just add, we have to do it. It's required in the charter.
Yes, understood. But
Okay,
in terms of the, let me reframe this a little bit. This isn't necessarily why we do it. This is what is helpful for the council to
Got it.
get from the evaluation. And I'll reframe this. So what is helpful for the council to get from the evaluation process? Okay. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, first of all, I believe it provides an opportunity for us to review the year, both from the perspective of the town manager and council. And in doing so, we kind of get to the second thing. It helps us shape the goals for the coming year and the financial guidelines. Which all dovetail by dates.
Yeah.
And those are the main things. Oh, and it helps us establish a basis for compensation.
Any other thoughts here? Oh my God, that's something. Stop doing that. Okay. Counselor Arte?
I think it provides a lens to see what other counselors are thinking. It gets us out of our own head and our own way of evaluating to see what everyone else thinks, and that enriches our thought process going forward.
Mm-hmm.
It also, may I?
Please.
Yeah, it also provides a lens or a way of looking at staff needs and committee needs, both from the town manager and in general, I think.
I think what's really interesting for me here is that we're kind of answering two questions. We're answering a bit of what is the purpose of it. And then I think Counselor Ete got at something as well that I think is really important here about what is, I think Pat, I'm not saying anyone's not getting at this, but like, what is it that we get from this that we don't get the rest of the time? And I think for me, it's kind of the biggest thing is that combination of what Counselor Ete said and what Lynn said earlier is like, it's a lens at the past year. And so for me, something that's helpful for us to get is a consistent style of response so that we can put everything next to each other, right? So my response is going to be in the similar format or style. I know that sounds nitpicky, but then Pat's, right? I'm not going to do numbers and Pat's going to do letters, right? We're kind of providing the same style of feedback. For me, that's something that we don't always get through on the same topic. We don't always get that in our discussion. So I think it's kind of this mesh of these things for me is that other people's perspective on the past year in a consistent format, in a consistent way. What else do we need from the evaluation? What do we need to get in order from the evaluation in order to do our jobs?
I think, I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
I think it also helps us look at what our role is and what the town manager's role is.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, there's things that the town manager does, and then there's actions that what he does that we as a council have to take. Appropriating money, you know, and sometimes that's things like not JCPC, CPA money in order to have a park or those kinds of things. So in other words, it just it it gives us the perspective of what our role has been in the various actions of the town manager and what his role is. I don't know how else to say it.
No, that's great. Thank you. Any other thoughts on what we need from this process in order to do our jobs? And then we'll move on. So and we can come back. None of these are locked, right? This is just kind of a brainstorm here. Let's think about Paul. Obviously, we will ask Paul this exact question, but for right now, what does Paul need from the evaluation process? Be it the end form, be it the self-eval, be it the staff evals. Think about the whole process. What is it that Paul needs from it? Or what does Paul get from it? Either one.
I think those are two different questions. I'm more inclined to be able to answer what do I think he gets from it. He reads every counselor's evaluation. He reads all of the stuff we give back to him. And it gives him some serious insight into our opinions and how they differ in many ways, not unlike what Freka said earlier. It allows him to look at the whole council.
Do you think that in that sense, if this is what sorry, I just had I felt like it was a really good thought. Now I lost it. So in terms of if he gets perspective from everyone, that is something that he needs to be able to have, right? He needs everyone to be able to honestly share their
Absolutely.
thoughts and their perspective.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
format and the way that the questions are framed needs to facilitate that.
Yes.
Okay. What else does Paul need or get from the evaluation process?
No, he gets his annual increase. Only if we're going to go above the automatic amount. He gets the automatic COLA, but if he's going to go beyond that. And then on a not every year basis, but periodically, he finds out whether we're going to extend his contract.
Something that I think is interesting to me is when we think about the staff, I really am excited to talk about how we engage the town staff in this process because I got a lot of really spastic thoughts, which I know everyone loves when I have those. But Paul doesn't see those, but right? But Paul
No,
does
he does. He sees the summary of them.
exactly. So he only sees the summary, he doesn't see the individuals.
Right.
But I do think that there are a lot of thoughts on 360 reviews and their efficacy and whether we should do them and all of that, right? But
Right.
I think that that is something that he gets in bulk that you do not normally get. Getting input from staff in that form that it takes, that summary, is something that he does not otherwise get, is my understanding, right?
Yes. I mean, he gets it. I think he gets some of the sense of that when he talks to department heads, and either individually or collectively, so that, I mean, periodically we'll hear him refer to staff as, being very excited about something, or frankly, occasionally being a little demoralized. And he doesn't get that necessarily from the evaluation, but he does get it from, meeting that he doesn't get that from the evaluation. He gets it from staff during the ongoing regular meetings he has.
So I want to push back on that a little bit because tell me what the summary is that he gets from the staff then.
He gets a summary of ratings, and he gets their individual comments. And he knows how they're spread across departments.
So he does get the individual comments directly from the staff.
But he doesn't know who they're from.
Understood.
Yeah,
That's
he does.
completely different than hearing it from department heads. And our department heads are fabulous, but seeing exact wording and seeing exact comments, it is can be a very different message.
Right.
And I know it depends on the year, right? But I would argue that that is a something different that he gets that he does not normally get. No matter how good a department head is, they are not going to be able to pass on direct quotes from whatever staff member has given them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is a different thing.
Yeah.
Councillor Ette?
I think what you're both touching on is honesty. Something that the town manager would want from the evaluation is honest feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the department head can be honest, and those under the department head could also be honest, and both of those lines may not meet. So what is wanted is honesty from everyone who has an opportunity to evaluate the manager.
Mm-hmm. I think the other piece that sticks out to me here is there's feedback and then there's constructive feedback, right? Like I think that and both have a place here. But when I think about the needs, I think what's likely more helpful for Paul is this didn't happen the way I would have liked it to have happened this year. This is how I would like to see it done differently, or this is what I'd like to this is what I would like to see happen. Not necessarily how, that's his job is to figure out how, but not just to say what's not working, but to say what it would look like if it were working. And I think that those are, I think feedback that's framed in a constructive way would be helpful in these evaluations. Pat?
Yes, I've just lost my train of thought. Damn it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault. We're talking about honest feedback, constructive feedback. It'll come back to me and I'll raise my hand again.
Oops, I messed up my bullets here. Sorry.
Sorry,
No, that's not you.
what the hell was it?
So,
Ah.
oh yeah, go ahead.
I think that this is one of the things we need to directly ask Paul what do you get, and so we often somehow or other, I feel like he's out of the loop. Supposedly he's collaborating with us when we create, but I feel like we often don't ask, we assume. And in a way in which he can answer honestly. So asking in a public meeting is not necessarily the right tactic.
So my plan is I have not met with Paul individually in a while, so I'm overdue. My plan as chair was to request a meeting and ask him, with the committee's blessing, to ask him these questions or a subset of these questions or additional questions. That was one of the goals I'd like to
Great.
get. Because I agree completely. We need to know from him what's gonna be the most helpful thing for you as well. Okay. So I will do that. I will reach out to him. Ready?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Where have all my pens gone? We had people stay in this room which meant it got cleaned, which meant all my stuff is not in its normal chaos. Oh, there. Okay. So we're gonna go on here and then what is the next question was, what does our community need from the evaluation? And I'm interested if folks think that it would be helpful to ask the question of what does our staff need from the evaluation? It's down here a little bit more, but we're asking this question for all the other groups, so we can just jump that in here too. Let's start with them. So what do we believe that the town staff need or get from the evaluation? Pat?
I think that they get a chance to feel or experience the possibility of being heard by more than Paul, by being heard by the people on the council. And I think that's important. And, I'm jumping to the community at large one.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
don't think we should be asking for the community anymore for their opinion of the town manager. We've seen so much divisiveness, and it's a way of encouraging attack by the community, and I stand by these words. And I think that many communities are not putting it out to the public to respond. Just like counselors, but more intensely, I think that the community responds, did my needs get met? And that's not what we're really asking. So I have trouble with, after sitting in so many council meetings where terrible things are being said to the town manager and about him, I'm having a hard time seeing why we would want public input more than public comment.
Thank you. And I want to note, I'm truly capturing brainstorming notes. We will likely have notes that contradict ourselves, right? So this is not a final document. I'm just capturing our thoughts as we go. Thank you, Pat. Pat, I did move that down to this bullet point about what does not work well. If that's okay. All right, cool. Counselor Ate.
In the spirit of brainstorming, I wanted to hear a bit more from Pat because while I may not disagree in the same way that the town staff feel the town staff expect to be heard, I think people in the town expect to be heard. So what would be some of the ways in which they could express their displeasure or appreciation for the town manager? That is Pat, are you speaking about the process of engaging the public in an evaluation of the town manager? Or do you think that it shouldn't be done at all?
Right this second, I'm feeling like it shouldn't be done at all. I'm not sure honestly, I'm not sure if that's my final position. It does seem to me that the public makes their voice heard, by public comment, by sending in, whether, if they can attend, it's always the best, but but they have plenty of, ways of contacting all of us and giving us a critique of ourselves and of the town manager, through email, etc. I'm finding a kind of viciousness in this community intensifying. And I feel like it makes me value less what I'm hearing when there's an attack embedded in it. I think the public has plenty of opportunity to get information to us about what they think. Also, the other piece is what he does is extremely complicated. And I don't know. It just feels like that what I notice about the public evaluations is that it's really about specific issues. And it's got to be my way or the highway, or otherwise you're not doing a good job. And I'm tired of that attitude. It's not constructive or collaborative. So,
Thank you. Councilor Ate?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think part of this exercise that we're doing is to think through what the evaluation process is. And so what we say now and what we think about might change to next time we come. And I really appreciate that. I think there might be a way to square the circle, which is that it is possible to have public input in the evaluation process without having the public evaluate the town manager. And so what we're looking for is a way for the town to express some of the things that really matters to it. And that can then be what the council use in its own examination of the evaluation process. And that then doesn't have to be some kind of referendum on the manager, which in most cases ends up just being carried out by a small section of the town, but having a way in which people in the town can say, we are aware that there's an evaluation process going on. These are the things that we've seen. Could you put that in to how you're examining the manager? I think that might be helpful.
Thank you. Let's refocus for a minute just on C and D here. What do our town staff, and I think I put community here, but we also do seek feedback specifically from committee chairs. And so I'm going to break that out into a separate one here. And I apologize, I spaced when I was, again, as I was trying to eat tacos and write this at the same time. All right, which was a terrible idea, by the way. Community, nope, what are they called? Committee chairs. So something, okay. Any other thoughts on these kind of these last, any one of these last three? What do our town staff need? What do our committee chairs need? And what does our community at large need from this process? Lynn?
Yeah, I think the community and the staff need to know that we are evaluating the town manager. I think they need to know that we take it seriously. And I think that's for all of them.
I
I
will-
think it's not just, staff or committees or whatever. And I think they need to understand the absolute breadth of the job. And it's an amazing breadth of issues that a town manager has to oversee. And so that's all.
Thank you. I agree with what Councilor Arte said about the community at large needing needing a forum to share their thoughts. And I think that I don't know that the questions we've been asking have really, or the question we've been asking has really gotten there. So I think that I'm intrigued, Pat, by your comments, because I don't fully disagree with you. And honestly, one of the reasons I really appreciate doing this kind of work in committee is that the four of us, and when Hala joins, the five of us can really kind of wrestle with these questions. I'm fully expecting many of us to change our mind. We might end up deadlocked just in the other direction by the end of this. So I do think that the forum to share their opinions is important. For me, the question is that a piece of the evaluation or not? Because one of the things that I want to talk about, and I'll preview it, but I'm going to talk about a lot here in what does not work well, is that I feel that we as counselors do not have a good mechanism for incorporating the feedback that we get from the public, from the staff, and from our committee chairs into our own evaluations. And so I think for me, they need an evaluation that either can be taken fully into account by the counselors or is a completely separate forum from the town council evaluation. I don't feel like they're playing well together right now. They're not really meshing when we are looking just at the goals and then everybody else is asked questions that are separate from those. That's my hot thoughts right now. Anything else about needs from the council for the town manager? What else do we need from this? Something for me that's really important going back to the council. We need a really robust self-evaluation from Paul. He's given us those, but I think that's something that's been hugely helpful for myself filling those out. The self-evaluation part of this process, I think, is very important. Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I do too. And robust is an interesting word to add to it. I haven't thought about this before, so I'm going to take a chance with it. I feel like how am I going to say it? How am I? I'm a bit losing my train of thought, and I do apologize. That's why I'm not staying on the council. But I feel like the town manager needs to, he gives us a real good sense of the year, a good sense of the work that he and the staff have done towards meeting our goals. Okay. But what I'd like to see is another portion of it is for him is to really do a self-reflection so that he is articulating for himself and for the council where he sees he needs to do something. I mean, a consistent committee complaint is that he doesn't tell them things, he doesn't respond to things, you know, and what does he understand about that? And what does he in a self-reflecting way need to look at in order to change some of those things? You know, and maybe maybe that doesn't quite belong, I don't know. But I feel like I want to know, how does he really see the work that he's done and where he needs to improve, not just the overarching issues of the goals and meeting them. I don't know.
You're
I'm
getting it.
glad this is a brainstorm because I'm mostly full of brain farts, but
You're fine. And I should clarify to folks, when we look at our agenda, we are going to do this particular part of the brainstorm until about 7:30, and then we'll switch over to the ABRC charge. Unless people have a qualm with that. That is my current plan. Oh my God. Oh my God. I lost everything. Hang on.
oh, I hope that's not true.
I didn't lose everything. It's just in the wrong tab. All right. So let's, in our last few minutes, excuse me. So Pat, one of the reasons I'm really excited by what you just said is some of my research shows that certain towns are evaluating the town manager based on the goals that they set, like we do. Some towns are doing it based off of the job description, right? Which I think lends itself a little bit more towards the areas you're talking about, right? The kind of general, but getting to the specific areas of growth or areas of strength. And I think both are really important. And so I'm interested to see how this shakes out in terms of, yeah, I'm interested. I'm also full of brain farts today. But the piece of talking to the staff, I think their input is much more helpful on the idea of that, what's encapsulated in a job description or the role versus the specific goals that the council sets, right? So I think that I'm interested to see where this discussion goes because of the research that on the 3 towns that I was assigned. Lynn?
I think those are very good points. I have to say, I don't think I've ever looked at Paul's job description. Have you?
No, I was searching for it desperately in the 30 seconds before I signed on for this meeting.
I assume that when the job was posted, when he applied, is the last time that anybody attempted to write the job up.
Well, and I think that the baseline job description is in the charter, right? Like that.
Yeah, right.
That is kind of the overarching, but if someone wants to take that on as a side quest right now and just Google it to see what pops up and if it's different from the charter, I can look that up too. But typically job evaluations are based on job descriptions, right? That's the job descriptions and
Right.
goals. Those
But
are
see,
the 2 things.
but this raises for me another issue, and that is that there's certain things, and especially, and I'm not criticizing the fact that we've gotten down to 6 goals. I'm very delighted, frankly. Although I think we're going to find it's extremely difficult to evaluate him on those. People are going to want to, we'll talk about ratings later. The reality is that there's parts of his job that are absolutely and completely critical to the smooth running of the town. And yet we don't place a lot of emphasis on that in our goals.
Right.
So there's inconsistency between our goals and his job description.
So this is why I'm like the deja vu to all our goals conversations, right? Because we talked so much about, and all of you were here, so I know you remember this. We talked a lot about whether or not to include the general running of the town in the goals. And so my belief, and again, this is rough, and I'm not trying to steer us here. This is just my personal belief. My personal belief is that an effective evaluation would have a limited number of goals. I think we continue to need to cut those goals down, as well as that job description of, hey, keeping the town afloat, right? I do think that an effective evaluation needs to do both. And I think that there's a way, before anyone closes their computer and leaves, I do think that there is a way to do that without making this any longer and with possibly cutting it down. And what that requires, though, is really well-written goals that are able to just say complete, in progress, incomplete. Like, that's why that is so important, because there's got to be, in my mind, we have to be able to bring in that piece of the job description as written by the charter, or whichever we base it on, right? Because Lynn, you're right, and that's where that staff feedback comes in and is really crucial, because they're seeing that part of the job description that is manage the town, and we are seeing in our evaluation here are 87 goals. Did you do it or not?
I also think that as counselors, we need to get clear about what our real goals are. And there's just a lot of personal pudgy-muggy that gets put into the goals, and can be taken out, but it's time on, I'm thinking of one goal that came up, make sure people have food. Well, that's an incredible goal.
Right.
That counselor doesn't work on that idea. It is not the job of the town manager. That's, what are the real things that are our goals? And if though, and we're not honest, we're all, and I'm talking about all 13 of us. We all have places where we add the frou-frou and we want everybody to hear how much we want to fix the roads and sidewalks. So we lose track of what are our goals for this year. If we have $50,000 only, that we don't, to spend on roads, what's an honest goal that will come out of that? That could be answered, completed, in process, or whatever.
You are speaking my language and I love it. And I'm so excited to do goals again with you guys.
Not me.
Oh, no. You still get to do it at the start. Don't you worry. All right. So yes. All right. So I just jotted this note down here. Let's start with what does work well about our current process. And this could be anything. This could be the timeline. It could be a specific step in the process. It could be how questions are framed. It could be how a summary is created. What works well? Just what works well. And I want us to think about this. So the 3 questions are basically stop, start, continue. What are we going to stop doing? What are we going to start doing? And what are we going to continue doing? We are beginning our conversation just with the continue. What works well about our current process? Be as specific or broad as you would like. Nothing. Okay.
No, I think that we captured some of the things that do work well when we answered that first set of questions.
I want to repeat them. So I can pull them. I can go
Right.
here.
Yeah.
Let me try to get rid of this. There we go. We'll revisit here quickly and then I'll go back and write. And I'm going to be picky when I ask you to answer this question.
Mhm.
And I'm going to call out an example. I don't want someone to say, what works well is that it provides a lens. I want you to tell me what provides a lens. What aspect of this allows us to get there? Because we're looking at what specifically we should carry forward. I'm just warning you in advance that I'm going to get picky, because sometimes people don't like me when I get picky. All right. What works well?
So when he does his self-evaluation, we get a very significant lens on the job. And what has happened during that year.
Mhm.
The fact that we then don't tie it to the job description means we miss some things. So I'm sorry, I moved to what doesn't work well.
I can get that. I can get that. I'm adding it to what could be added, tying the
Mhm.
self-evaluation to the job description.
Mhm.
They can bleed a little bit. I just want us to try to focus on that first one.
Okay.
Any other thoughts about what works well in our current process?
I think it forces counselors. I mean, I'm not saying they welcome this, but it forces counselors to think about his job, how he does his job, and where they stand on things.
What about the process forces that?
The fact that they write the self-evaluation.
Okay, so individual counselor responses force counselors to think about, okay, the job of the town manager, how he does his job, and what was the last thing?
And their role in that, in
Yeah.
all of it.
Shouldn't we do self-evaluations with that too?
We do. We run for office every 2 years.
Yeah, but again, to Pat's point, how brutally honest are we in those moments? Okay. What else is working well?
Again, I think without an evaluation, you have no basis for which you can do compensation beyond normal or adjust his contract or extend his contract. Without an evaluation, you have no basis for it.
I'm gonna try to pull on the thread there. Like, what is it that gives us that basis?
The fact that we have actually, as a group, talked about it.
Okay, so having a group discussion about the evaluation provides a base for discussions on salary and contract.
Mhm.
So I'm seeing group discussions as well as individual council responses as well as self-eval, all being things that provide something helpful to us.
Yes.
Let's think about the timing. The timing is a bit, it's supposed to be cyclical, right? It's supposed to, informs the goals inform the eval. We typically begin this process. Let's see, when did it go out last time? I had the emails, but I can't remember what they were dated. All right, so October, the material goes out to, the self-eval comes out, the email sent to staff, excuse me, emails are sent to committee members, public is notified. So late October, roughly, the process begins of people saying their individual things, which means that Paul does his self-eval early October. Is that right? So Paul has had roughly, if we get our act together and give him goals on time, 10 months towards his goals. And so he's really, this is not a full annual, it's really just 10 months. Well, I guess, anyway, whatever. Lynn?
No, in conversations with Paul, I've always encouraged him to think ahead and realistically, what will he accomplish in those goals and reflect that in the evaluation.
Okay,
He'll accomplish by the end of the year.
perfect. So when then were these due back to you, Lynn? I could look at the emails reminding me that I hadn't done mine yet, but those are going to be buried. Was it mid-November? Was it around Thanksgiving? Was it like a month?
They're due back at the very beginning of November because,
Beginning.
or maybe right after the financial indicators, because I know that then there's the week from hell where I have to pull it together.
Okay. How do we do that? Okay. Because well, this last year we got the staff evals and community evals early November. Okay, so we've got a couple weeks then, basically. Okay. Oh my gosh. Does the current timeline allow us to get an accurate snapshot? And the answer might be yes. An accurate snapshot in order to complete our evaluations, allow adequate time to get feedback from staff and committee members, and allow us adequate time to provide thoughtful evaluations. Or any of those three.
We used to take a lot longer. And frankly, the results weren't any better.
I have found that professionally to be true as well.
It's kind of like, here's your timeline, get it done.
I will be a week late no matter when the deadline is. Any other thoughts on this, Lynn? I know we've heard from you because of your proximity to the process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry. But
You do not need to apologize. They've been really helpful insights. But I'm curious, Pat, you've engaged in this process a couple years now. And Councilor Ette, so have you. I'm curious from your perspective, what does have merit about it?
Yeah.
Sorry, when my friend drives.
No, I feel like it reflects on what the town manager and the staff have done for the year, which is something that is helpful. But if we use it well as individual counselors, it also reflects back on us, what we're asking, what we're, what actually is truly important to the council as compared to what publicly is important. Maybe they're the same thing, but not always. So that quality of reflection, I think, is really important, whether or not we do our share of self-reflection through this process as counselors. I honestly don't know. So I must admit that I read everything that I can. Last year I didn't do such a good job, but before that, I think I turned in decent responses. But I kind of like, okay, it's done. And it feels like that. It doesn't, I'm wondering, yes, I know it does certain things, but how does it help me in my job as a counselor, or how ultimately does it help Paul in his work as the executive? I'm not really sure. So that's as honest as I can be right this second.
So let's shift then. Oh, sorry, Councilor Arte, go ahead.
I just want to say my silence reflects my proximity to the process.
Can you expand on that a little bit? What do you mean?
If Lynn is knee deep in it, I stayed at the periphery, frankly. It is a lot of work, especially for a newbie. And one of the things that Lynn pointed out, and I really agree with this, is that the public discussions helped. Because everyone comes in with a lens, and that lens is narrow. But seeing what other people think about provides a bigger spectrum in which one can say, okay, I can place what I'm thinking in this position, and maybe I didn't think about this, or I've listened to what this person has said, but I don't see that as necessary to the way we should evaluate. And so for me, having the discussion out in public was really helpful. And that informed the final product that I had, which then got reflected in the one-on-one conversation that I ended up having with Paul. So I think getting everyone together to share what they're thinking, kind of defend or advocate for why they are where they are.
Thank you. All right. I'm keeping an eye on the audience here, and I'm gonna let us go a little bit longer. And we'll see if when Michelle and Hala join us. Let's shift to what does not work well. Let her rip. What is not working about our current process? Again, please be specific. What elements should we stop or change? Something that the things that I pulled out from prior discussions, asking the community at large, kind of the broad questions, encourages divisiveness and attacks. The public may not have the nuanced view of the role of the town manager, and it's a heavy lift. This takes a long time to do from any perspective, right? All of these engaging in this process from any angle takes a lot of time. Excuse me. Councilor Ate?
The response rates are low,
Mm.
especially for staff, and that is understandable. So maybe we can reflect on ways or reach out to staff to see ways that they could contribute, whether it might be making the period longer. I don't think that would be helpful, but just find some other ways in which we can increase the response rate for staff and the evaluations. And like I mentioned, with the public, even if we don't have a public survey, just letting everyone be aware that the evaluation is happening and finding a way to get input from the public without having it be a referendum on the manager.
All right. What else isn't working about our current process? I think for me, it is only focused on the goals. And so we miss a large chunk of the work of the town manager in our evaluation.
I agree. The other piece is that, and this is just, you're just hearing my own frustration. There is no way, given open meeting law, to share the burden of writing.
You mean of writing the summary?
Yes.
Why? If it
Because-
were you and the vice chair or,
My understanding is that there is just no way to do that.
but why?
You raise a very good question, Pat. If it was just me and one other person, this is where Athena should weigh in. If me and one other counselor took on the job of writing, would it, is that doable? Is that legal? I don't know.
This in a webinar on open meeting law and public records today. There was an MMA webinar, and I have to go and check my notes, but it talked about this specific situation, and I believe what Lauren Goldberg had said was that if the council authorizes two members to do something on its behalf, then it's considered a subcommittee. But if somebody's just doing something to bring it back, I have to check. But it sounds like there's a way of doing it. It's just a matter of how much authority you're giving the people who are doing the thing. Lynn, you're muted. If you said something.
Yeah, no, in the very first year or two, I actually tried to come up with ways to get different people to write. You know, some people can also say, well, listen, that's why you get paid the big bucks. Which is a laughable item. If you recall, by the way, I also suggested that chairs of committees should get paid an extra stipend because of the extra work they do.
Not unless I got it and I didn't. I think that's
No.
silly, but I
Anyway.
don't want to go there.
All of that's aside, I'd
Oh,
like to explore
us-
ways in which the president could have assistance in writing.
And Lynn, I think to that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Athena.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out that this is an opportunity to recreate a process that really doesn't work very well. And the evaluations that had been produced in the past were very, very lengthy. The council would sit down together and read them together for hours, and at the same time read the president's summary and the memo. So if there's a different kind of process, then there might be a different way of creating a memo, an evaluation memo
Right.
and summary, because it won't be this very long thing that the council has to sit together and read. So I wanted to put that out there because, trying to do the old way better is just gonna
Backfire.
might just result in a slightly improved, better old way, but there
Yeah.
could be a better new way.
Athena, you took the words out of my mouth, and I appreciated it because you said that more eloquently than I would have.
I don't believe that, but I like when that happens.
Anna,
Yes,
Anna, can we get more from Athena because about other aspects of this that work or don't work? I think that her contributions would be really valuable to this committee.
absolutely. Athena, please know you're always welcome to chime in now, but I'm also happy to sit down with you and kind of do a more in-depth one-on-one on my tour of town hall, town manager evaluation feedback.
Sounds good. I'm here if you need me.
All right. No problem. And all right, Athena. So yeah, I think that's Athena, Councilor Ajay, I'm going to go to you in 1 second, but Athena's point is exactly what we're trying to do here, right? Like we aren't looking at the same process in a slightly different shell. We have an opportunity to make it look completely different so that that burden doesn't exist. And what I'm trying to do here is capture the problems so that when we start thinking about the structure, we can keep this in mind, right? So that we're not recreating the same problems that we've had for the past few years. For the past many years. Councilor Ate?
I'd like to return us to one of the things that was mentioned, which was that one of the things not working was we focused on the goals. And I wanted to know what you meant by that.
When I said it wasn't working because we focused on the goals?
We focused specifically on how did you describe it? Yes, we focused mostly on the goals without considering that there are other things that the town manager does that are not part of the goals. Could you expand why, from your perspective, that meant it's not working?
Yeah, so I think what's not working right now is that if this is supposed to be the evaluation of the town manager's performance, his performance extends beyond the list of goals that the town council has voted as his priorities for the coming year. In our list, for example, a major responsibility of the town manager is to directly manage his direct reports, as well as, through them, the remainder of the staff of the town. And we don't have a goal specifically that is successfully manage the staff of the town, right? Because that's not a well-written goal, and I would have thrown a hissy fit about it. But two, it's not necessarily something new for the coming year. So as we shift our goals to being more specific and action oriented for the year that they're addressing, like for that coming year, we are not, and if we only keep our evaluation process to that, we are missing the ongoing work of the town manager that takes up a lot of his time, if not most of his time. So there are large pieces of his job that are not captured in the town council goals that I believe he should be getting credit for lack of a better word, in his evaluation. And there may be areas of growth that we're not getting to address because they're not part of our goals. So an example of that is something Pat talked about earlier when we get feedback from staff. It's not often pertaining to one of the specific goals the council had for the town manager, but it's really important to be addressed with the town manager. And in our current evaluation system, we don't necessarily have a place to speak on that. So that's what I mean is we need to have an evaluation that looks at the full purview of work, not just the set of goals that we wanted him to accomplish in that year. Does that clarify?
Yes, yes, it does. And I didn't ask the question as a throwaway. I asked it because I think at some point we did have to take some kind of vote. And when we're taking the vote, at least for me, it was more than just what the goals were. I was thinking of all those other things that weren't part of the evaluation as well. But from what I hear you saying, that should be something that isn't just implicit, but if we could also make it explicit in our evaluation, then that would be helpful for the process.
I think so. That's
Okay.
that's my thought. Any last thoughts before we're going to wrap this up and move to our next item, which is the Amherst Block Reparations Committee charge? We will be returning back to this. First off, I do want to thank you all very, very much. This was an excellent brainstorm. You did a great job. We will continue this. We're going to continue this process. I would encourage you to keep doing that research, keep doing that homework. Before we sign off, not sign off of this topic, sorry, don't get excited. Did anyone, I just wanted to open the floor for folks who did that homework on other towns. Was there anything exciting that you saw that you wanted to just mention here? And this isn't me just checking if you did your homework or not. And if not, reminder that in the memo in your packet, I assigned everybody a couple towns to just look at quickly. So for example, you know, in my little notes from other towns, it's really interesting. Bridgewater looks just at the job description, whereas Franklin is based on goals like we are. That was kind of where I started down this path of, oh yeah, that's a whole piece of this we're missing. Was there anything that folks wanted to share with the group about anything they learned? And if not, we'll come back to that. I just wanted to, if you were excited about something, give you an opportunity. Councilor Ette?
I don't know if it was exciting, but one of the three you gave me had a mayor.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any town manager goals for the mayor.
What was the town? Because there was one that I included that still had a town administrator.
So Sudbury and some other town close to Boston are the two that I ended up looking at because the third had a mayor.
Okay. Let me check back to see why I put it on there and okay, and I'll let you know, or you can just, you know, find some other piece of research. That's exciting. Anything else for the good of the order before we move to the ABRC charge? Okay. Excuse me. Thank you all for this part of the process. I appreciate it. We will be back to this. We're going to shift gears now. Now that we have, I'm so sorry. I think I'm jumping all over my my poor agenda. I want to just really quickly, because we do have members of the public, open it up for public comment before we get into our ABRC charge. So if members of the public would like to make public comment, you can go ahead and raise your Zoom hand now. And if Zoom user in the attendees is Hala, also please raise your hand so that I can know that it's you. Public comment going once, going twice. Did that give me enough time to pull up the document I needed? No. All right. sold. So here we go. We are going on to discuss the ABRC. Oh no, I lost her. Committee charge.
I was just about to ask you if you wanted me to bring her in.
I did, and then I just
Oh,
found
here
her.
we go.
Oh, there she go. Okay. Whew. Thank you. If you could, that would be great.
Yep.
All right. And welcome, Michelle. No need to put your video on. I just wanted to make sure you had the ability to mute and unmute as desired, as we kind of get into this discussion. And I know that Hala will be joining, and I know Councilor Arte, you have to jump. That's okay. We do still have a quorum, but no one else can leave. All right. So I'm gonna pull up our document here. So this document captures a bit of our discussion last time. Michelle, I know you couldn't join us last time, but I wanted to just pause before we really get going and see if you had thoughts you wanted to share on the outset. Otherwise, we can kind of keep working through this and see about our where we had indecision, and I said to revisit later. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to add any comments in now before we go through.
Thank you, Anna. And I think Dr. Shabazz is also here. I'm not sure if he was the one coming in as the user. So just wanted to mention that. The main comments that I had were related to your discussion on the purpose. And so if you want to wait until you come back to that, that was the area that I just thought I'd give some feedback on when you're
Okay.
ready.
Perfect. And I think, yes, we have got Dr. Shabazz here. Welcome. Did you have any comments to add before we get started as well?
I want to just thank you all for all the work you're putting in and hopefully bringing this to a point that will go on to the council and be favorably received or voted forward. And just to thank you. That's really all.
Thank you. Okay. Let's actually start with the purpose, because I think this is a little quibbly thing we can get to kind of towards the end here. So this purpose section got a lot of reworking through suggestions from counselors and through our discussion. Michelle, you said that you had some thoughts on this section. Would you like to share those?
Sure. I thought it was a really good discussion I did watch the video, and I thought it was a really good discussion, and I could tell from the council's discussion that, you know, this was up. So it needs to definitely, you know, be discussed. I have been giving this a lot of thought, and also following some other, you know, like what Evanston has done and some other communities. And, you know, this is a step-by-step process. And what really comes to me is the necessity. I mean, we're talking right now about how, you know, the monies are going to be spent, but we really don't even understand like how much money and in what sort of, you know, like we know what we have now, but the finance committee really hasn't, I don't think, unless I've missed something, had a robust conversation about the mechanism, whether this is an endowment, whether it's not, whether it's, you know, funded annually or every other year. And so to me, that piece really needs to be decided on as a priority. And then the other piece is the legal aspect. We know that, you know, there may be legal challenges, there may be opportunities that we haven't, like going for the special legislation. So in some ways, it feels like, I know we've put a lot of work into this charge, and I certainly don't want to slow us down, but in some ways it feels like we need to take a step back and really like look at what it is we need to do to even get to a place where we can, you know, start spending, anything from the fund, or, distributing funds at all, distributing reparations, at least where there's a financial component at all. So I just wanted to encourage us to kind of really step back and think about, again, the financial aspect and the legal aspect in being both of those being priorities for, before anything else. And I don't know how necessarily to get that, incorporated right now. Maybe Dr. Shabazz will have more thoughts on that, but that definitely seems like the logical next steps to me. So thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. And I think one of the big questions was whether or not that step back and the things that you're talking about was going to be the work of this committee, or whether that was the work of the council. That and I'm like very much high level summarizing that, but I think that seemed to be some of the debate, was whether this committee would be establishing those or making recommendations on the priority areas to focus on, or things like that, or whether that was a council discussion and decision, and then this committee is implementing it. And committee members, and Michelle, you watched the meeting, but I think that's kind of my rough question, one of my many rough questions right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in some ways, it's like, I'm not sure that this committee is even in its current, the way that it's currently being envisioned. I'm just imagining, all right, let's get, Paul we'll get folks onto the committee, and then they get there and it's like excitement, and we want to do this and we want to do that, but then we're again at this place of, well, but we don't even know how the council wants the fund to operate, and we don't know what we can legally move forward with. And so I just want to make sure we don't get into a situation like that. And I know we're all very encouraged, at least I will speak for myself, to move forward with this and get some of these things going. But I also know that there are really important things that we need to consider, so that we get it as right as we can, I guess I'll say.
So thank you. I agree, and I don't have a good answer for you at this time. I think one of the things that, speaking for myself, it felt was necessary was it's almost like this needs to be two committees. Like, it's almost like this needs to be a prep work committee, another prep work committee, and then an implementation committee, which I think was part of why the priority areas emerged as we get there. But we noticed ourselves kind of getting in those same weeds of how do you determine what to do before you get to the implementation piece, if that makes sense. So when we look at the actual purpose statements, I'm trying to recall, and I'm going to need some assistance with memory here. So these suggestions came in from other folks. So if people remember, I combined all of the suggestions that people made. And then I think this was a third one that came in additionally via email. So when we look at these options for a mission statement, we're kind of choosing between a lot of different edits here. Do people have thoughts on this? Let's start with this one on the right, which is fully written and is different from this. So the one on the right reads, ABRC's mission is to help implement reparations by providing support and advice to the town council and the town manager as they seek to address the harms caused by supportive slavery and post-Reconstruction discrimination by the town residents, businesses, and other Amherst associated entities. So I read that as very much shifting it to be the committee is providing support and advice instead of doing implementation. Lynn.
Yeah. First of all, thank you both, Michelle and Amilcar, for being here. These are very important conversations, and what I'm about to say reflects why I think it needs to be the committee. I believe that the committee they're there because they have an intense interest in this issue, probably more intense than anyone on the council. That doesn't necessarily reflect negatively on the council. It's just that, you want to be on this committee because you have thoughts about reparations and you have thoughts about what the money could do. So I think there are resources that could be brought to the committee. For example, finding out how other funds, we have 2 other funds that basically are done through a grant process every year. And, I'm assuming this is a grant process. Maybe that's the wrong assumption, but that's some assumption right there. And finding out how those 2 work. That's the CDBG money and it's the CPA money. And based on that, it does seem to me that because the group is going to then, meaning the committee, is probably then going to manage the process of putting out an RFP, accepting proposals, and then, coming up with recommendations that they would then bring to the council, and the council would vote to fund or not fund. And, for instance, every year as we go through the CPA process, there's discussion among the council about certain kinds of things that periodically have come up as recommendations out of the CPA. But it really, to me, it's frankly, using the enthusiasm and the knowledge of people like you, our residents, to really provide insight into how this process should work based on other processes, but also bringing into it what the goal is of this process and of this fund. So I actually feel, for instance, just last Monday night, our Public Arts Commission came to the council. They had come earlier. We actually asked them to go back and spend a little more time, and they did. And they did a phenomenal job of coming to us with a plan and a request for how to proceed with our Percent for Art, which is the first time we're doing Percent for Art on a public space. It's the first time we're implementing the bylaw. And frankly, many people on that committee come from experience of, knowing art, knowing how artists work, knowing maybe some of them are artists. But it was really important that they did the homework and then could bring it to us, because otherwise the council's not going to have the time. This is why we have the blessing, frankly, of committee members that do this kind of work for the town. It's a real blessing. So that's my thoughts.
Pat?
I wonder if the purpose does the committee, I mean, ultimately the purpose is to address reparations. And I think the statement that's on, in the track changes is a better version of that. But there are 2 phases, and Michelle brought that up clearly. The first part of what this committee has to do is create the mechanism, whether, council, and the council has to make some decisions about whether it's going to be an endowment, how, blah, 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 blah. But this committee can look at CPA, they can look at CDBG and make a determination about the structure that will be used. And then go into the process which is listed of providing support and advice to the town council, just like the CPA people do. They bring the projects, we talk about them in council, and then the council makes a decision which ones to fund. So it does seem to me that this, while I hear the call for two committees, one to do the mechanism, and no, it's important, Anna. One to create the mechanism and stuff, can it be embedded in the first iteration of this committee? And then, and I'm also wondering, I'm going back on, I was looking at CPA and CDBG, and they have 9 members. So the work, I mean, they have some vacancies, so there's probably actually only 7, but, I don't know. Ultimately, the council makes, I think the thing that the committee talked about last time, and this is something to help all committees with, because committees do a tremendous amount of work. It doesn't mean that everything they recommend will be accepted. And somehow or other that's kind of a basic knowledge that's difficult. So ultimately, the council makes a decision about what aspects of the recommendations made by this committee will be funded, whatever the process is for funding, whether it's more than 1 year, et cetera, which are important decisions.
So of the options that we have, and Pat, I was doing this meaning like I don't actually think we should have 2 full committees, but I agree if there's a way to talk about that in the purpose and in the charge, to outline the difference in kind of phases, that's important. Of the, Pat, I heard you say that you preferred the track changes version, which I believe, if I'm getting this right, it would read, ABRC's mission is to make recommendations to the town council on the expenditure of the Reparations Stabilization Fund for reparations for harms caused by support of slavery and post-Reconstruction discrimination by the town, residents, businesses, and other Amherst associated entities, including consideration of areas recommended by the September 26, 2023 African Heritage Reparation Assembly final report.
I'm actually saying I like the one in the track change better.
You mean the comments one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. My
Yeah.
issue with the one in the comments is I don't like the word support. All right, I like these words generally, but support and advice is really different than recommendations. And I think that for me,
Yeah.
recommendations needs to be
You're
there.
right.
That, yeah. And for me, this one really weakens the work of the committee, because this is saying that this is obviously the council should be working to address the harms caused, but this is saying this body is just supporting the town council in the town council's work on that. That's my reading of it. And I see their work as more specific to this.
Yeah. I'm seeing your interpretation. Yeah.
But if I'm misinterpreting, I'm very open.
No, I just, there's something smoother about how the other one is written that I like, so I'm not sure what that is. So, I mean, we are asking them to make recommendations. So, for harms
I'm wondering if
caused by the support of slavery and post, the rest of, I think I can go with the one we have here. And in the purpose now.
okay. I'm going to resolve this. We had a committee question. If we cut back the purpose, to be making recommendations, what happens to the recommendations that are not about expenditure of funds? So there were, Dr. Shabazz.
Right. I like the sense of some of the part that is struck out to say implement or to implement reparations by developing recommendations to the council. I guess the thing I wanted to bring in to not limit it just to the stabilization fund, in that the two funds that Lynn referenced, I could see projects that relate to harms, that relate to reparative justice, that might also want to incorporate funding support from the Community Preservation Act. So, for example, Community Preservation Act funded a poet's walk, and in that poet's walk, there is one African American that's in it, Shirley Graham Du Bois. There's a plaque over by the Lord Jeff where she sort of lived. But if one of the proposals might be to develop a kind of reparations walk, a kind of walk that would highlight others, not just poets or writers, but why, folks throughout history, and that could fit under funding from the Community Preservation Act, and therefore would be this committee, however, might be a good place for also endorsing it relative to how it relates to reparations, not just related to the historic preservation aspect of the CPA. So I think if you can find ways to make this language be a little more, can be about recommendations from the stabilization fund, but to allow it a little broader, more capacious possibility, then I think it would give that committee opportunities to do a wider range of things than, and it's certainly in line with what we thought, because when we thought about things, we thought about it not only when we were asked to identify in our original charge the African Heritage Reparations Assembly funding sources. We were never limited to just thinking about the stabilization fund, whether as a one-time, whether as an endowment. Most of us talked about it as a kind of an endowed thing, but whatever the case might be, we always were thinking about and looking at other kinds of funding sources than just that source for the kinds of repairs that we might could see happening.
Thank you. I don't have the language yet. I'm hearing what everyone's saying, and I'm open to language suggestions as we go through, because it's not coming to me yet. Pat, do you have it?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment, Amilcar. You said some of these suggestions would of the CPA could fund. And one of the things that like the housing, Affordable Housing Committee does is make recommendations. They give proposals to CPA and CDBG. So that is something I think automatically this committee would be able to do, not saying that the money is going to come from them entirely or at all, but they're recommending this project because it fits the criteria for the CPA. I think one of the most important things we can do is get a sense of what kinds of, how we would, what are the categories, that we'll be addressing with the reparations fund, and how can this committee then work to get funding from other committees as well.
So, Pat, I want to.
Go ahead.
No. It's because it relates to what you just said. You said I know it's going to happen. The areas that the reparations fund were like the priority areas, right? And I think one of the big questions here is whether or not it is who is determining those priority areas.
Right.
And so I want this committee to think about whether that is a council discussion and vote, or whether it is this committee tells us, hey, these are the top 5, and then a council vote to accept them, or something else I'm not thinking of. But to me, those seem like the two options. And I'd like to hear from the committee about where you're landing. Lynn?
So I believe that this committee has that conversation, just like they have the conversation about how to distribute the money. They meet with the council, they talk about it and make a recommendation, and we either mess with the recommendation or we vote the recommendation. I mean, again, I go back to a combination of both how we approach CPA recommendations, but then also how we approached the percent for art thing the other night. It was just, without that committee having spent the time they did describing how a process could work, even providing us with a budget example of how it would work, I don't think the council would have even begun to be able to vote. And they, they're respected people in our community who decided to take the time to come up to do the homework and to come to the council with a strong recommendation. And I just appreciate that. I mean, and I think that's what this committee should do. If they come and somebody says, well, we think, what about, should this be used for whatever? And, maybe there's a back and forth once or twice before a final set of recommendations are made. But I also think that we don't want to so lock the hands of the committee that whatever we recommend now couldn't be changed 2 years later in terms of categories. Because we may have some residents who come up with some really exciting ideas that don't even fit in those categories. And I don't want to turn that off either.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns as well. Is this as simple as saying the ABRC's mission is to make recommendations to the town council on the priority areas for and expenditures of the reparations stabilization fund for reparations for harms, etc. Because they're talking about priority areas.
Capture that language, Anna. I think you just did it.
So it would read, I love that, but who knows? All right, so purpose would read, ABRC's mission is to make recommendations to the town council on the priority areas for and expenditure of the Reparations Stabilization Fund for reparations for harms, I don't like that part, caused by support of slavery and post-Reconstruction discrimination by the town, residents, businesses, and other Amherst associated entities, including consideration of areas recommended by the September 26, 2023 African Heritage Reparation Assembly final report. This part is awkward to me, these 2 4s right in a row, but I think we can fix that quickly. Does this then encapsulate the idea and not limit, not place undue bounds on the work of this committee, but also make it very clear that we are not trying to open the portal to everywhere, and we want them to focus on expenditure of funds? Are we kind of threading that needle?
Couldn't you just say, priority areas for an expenditure of the Reparation Stabilization Fund for reparations of harms caused by the support of slavery?
I think that makes sense. Just change that 4 to an of, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Should I accept these changes to see kind of where we're at? I still have the old version. Go away. All right. It's getting closer to readable. All right, this is close enough to readable. We'll accept the other changes, right?
Yeah.
We have a purpose. Love that for us. Okay. So getting into the priority areas. Mandy and her formatting of my 0.5 inches thing is so funny. Okay. There weren't changes in here other than formatting ones. Sorry. But we get into a mess down here with the funding part. Okay. So one of the big discussions that we had last time is confusion about the allocations and the suggestion from a counselor that this committee needs to determine whether allocations would be made annually, biennially, or multi-year. And what this means, whether this means the drawdown from a fund, recommended total expenditure amount, or something else. That was one of the questions here. And what they were trying to get at in this comment was to know, basically to say that the committee needs to know what their budget is that they're working with.
Yeah.
And their point was that if they did this every other year, instead of every year, it would allow for greater amounts of funding to go out. Because this committee will not have, one of the things CPA has is borrowing ability, and this committee will not have that, is my understanding. So the amounts are smaller than what CPA could give. Now that this is marinated, or Michelle or Dr. Shabazz, do you have any thoughts? Yeah, Dr. Shabazz, go ahead.
Well, one thing a while back that we had thought about was one, if things, there are a lot of questions that are behind the things you're raising from the standpoint of our press deliberations. So, for example, one of the things we had suggested, if movement of monies from free cash or from other or in whatever way could go ahead and fully endow the thing at 2 million, then if we could start saying that there might be enough for annually, once it would start generating the interest, annually 100,000. And so you know what you're working with from that particular fund. But if we're still, inching on it each year for a small amount based upon free cash, and we still don't even have a sense of when are we at the 2 million to start generating 100K. It becomes hard to plan. So I think, I would recommend we came out in our deliberations was asking to accelerate the completion of the fund at 2 million as an endowment that would then yield this amount that you could then work from. And we begin testing this out, seeing if people like the results and people thought this is wonderful and wanted to scale it up, whatever, you could think about doing that. But that was the specific approach we were suggesting as not a one and done, but something that would be kind of ongoing, a set amount available each year. And then part of it is, even while building the endowment or waiting for it to get to that interest generating capacity, if the council would deliberate and decide to go ahead and start the 100,000, making the 100,000 available for proposals, then we could get started. The committee, the ABRC, could get started sooner than later. So there is a real timing aspect to this, but as far as the model or the mechanism, we were pretty clear from our deliberations. Yes, setting this up, starting with this figure of 2 million, if letting it get started with something like a budget of 100K a year to take proposals that within that parameter, and then see what people like and see what happens from it, and then, like I said, scale up, grow grow with the success of it, or stay where it is. If you're not getting very many proposals, you could just stay where it is. So that's a little bit from how we had deliberated on it.
Pat?
Yeah, thank you, Amakar. What is the total of the fund now? It was coming from cannabis revenue. And what has been accumulated so far?
Michelle, thank you, because I definitely don't have those numbers.
I don't have the exact number, Pat, but it was getting close to 500,000 the last time that I looked at it. And I'm not sure if the transfer has happened yet this year.
Right.
But we do know that the cannabis tax revenue's gone down dramatically. I am just looking at the final report real quick, just to add to what Dr. Shabazz said, and there were 3 options that we talked about for a financing plan, and Sean Mangano was really helpful in creating these options, as was the town manager. The town manager's preference was option 2. I don't know if you or it was actually the town manager's suggestion, which was a very creative suggestion, I thought. If you guys, I'm not sure if you have that report in front of you, but option 2, I think there was a little bit of resistance to fully funding the 2 million, immediately. So option 2, the town manager thought would get us that 100,000 immediately on an annual basis, coming from the tax revenue of cannabis as we had envisioned it, but would not require the full 2 million to be taken from anywhere and put into the stabilization fund. And this is the kind of question that I really think, like, the finance committee started having the discussion but didn't complete it. And so I think, as we're, or at least simultaneous to this committee getting up and running, I do think that it would be important for the finance committee to come back to that and make a recommendation to the council, so that when the committee is formed, it knows what it has to work with.
So, all right, I'm trying to wrap all of these comments into what to do with these bullets, because we've got 4 minutes in the rest of our meeting, and so for me, I guess it's fine to keep this in here, because this would lead to that conversation, right? Of kind of what drawdown mechanism you want to use, all of that. I'm wondering if it needs to be put in here more explicitly. Because right now we've got this top bullet that's kind of getting at, is it? Dr. Shabazz and Michelle, you both just said really wonderful things that I want to capture, and I'm not quite sure how to capture it in a bullet point, or whether it means we should change any of the existing bullet points.
I would suggest that we at least put a bullet point here that says review the funding plan that was recommended in the final AHRA report. Since, I think a tremendous amount of thought went into that, at least as one bullet point. Here, that the committee, as soon as they get up and running, can start reviewing that, incorporate that with these other bullet points that you have, to then, as Lynn said, be able to come to the council or the finance committee with a really strong recommendation.
Okay, I'm just gonna keep this. So adding in the bullet that says review funding plans recommended in the AHRA final report. Okay. So I guess one of our questions last time is that we weren't clear on when the comment said establish a budget for the total expenditure, we weren't clear on whether that meant the amount drawn down from the fund, total expenditure, etc. But basically, what I'm hearing from this conversation is we should leave this as is, and the committee is going to determine that. So I'm going to resolve this. Okay. We've discussed those. So Mandy and your indents. Okay. See, they're still all wrong. All right. Are there any thoughts on this in our final? Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, your hand is still up. Is that a lingering hand, or did you have a thought?
Lingering.
Were there any other edits to this funding section? And then that is where we will likely leave it for today and come back to. Michelle and Dr. Shabazz, I really appreciate you joining us, and I apologize that we didn't have as much time as we would have wanted with this. You're catching GOL in the midst of two really brain-heavy projects, and so we've been doing a lot of this type of work today. So I appreciate your patience and willingness to work with us.
You're so welcome. And again, thank you for all your work. I think
Yes,
we're very
thank you
You.
so much.
I also will say that I don't want to finish this with just 3 members of GOL here, to be honest. I would like to have more members of our committee here, and having an opportunity to weigh in on this, and we've got more to discuss. So let's pause it here. We will get into the next page kind of when we reconvene. But Michelle, Dr. Shabazz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We will be continuing this. I put the GOL meeting schedule in the packet so that we had it. Our next meeting is June 10th. So that will be the date that we will continue this discussion. If you're able to join us, shoot me an email and let me know if you've got specific timings. And then we will go from there. So
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
much. It is 8:30 and I want to be respectful of everybody's whatever day of the week this is, Tuesday. So in your packet you have the remainder, the 2025 GOL meeting schedule. We will meet again on June 10th. My action items are to reach out to Paul to talk through the town manager evaluation and to sit down with Athena to talk through the same topic. Excuse me. I will remind the council to please send me any edits to the council rules of procedure. I'm keeping an eye on CAFs as they come in, but you'll notice I haven't put that back on the agenda yet because they haven't been coming in. So I'm keeping an eye on it and we'll keep putting it on the agenda. But once there's more, we haven't been able to find the pool sufficient. So until we get more in, I haven't been putting it on the agenda, but just so you know, I haven't forgotten that. We'll continue evaluation process as well as other proclamations, resolutions, etc. that come through. And I'm super excited and still waiting on that public urination bylaw to come through to us too. So that'll be fun. Any upcoming agenda items that I didn't mention in my quick review? I know that there are other things that are further on the back burner. That's just kind of our next couple meetings. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And I will call the vote. Pat.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Thank you all very much. Athena, thank you so much. What did I do, Lynn? Why are you laughing at me? Have a wonderful rest of your
It's
evening.
something my family did in the background.
All right. With that, I will let you go and enjoy it.
Good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks.